So, as many of you know, I love the Patriots. So does my friend Pat the Patriot. I'm just going to throw that name out there. Also, got to say, rocking the goatee as well. But
Yeah,
since you and I have started talking and we've had our online and in person friendship, because I can say that about you,
it's true.
we've never been where we've been. I started the show and it hasn't been like that. So it's I don't know about you. It still feels it's like good but surreal at the same time. 9-2.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and it's reminiscent of the good old days,
Yeah.
right? And I was thinking the other day, it's funny because with Jacoby Brissett, Bledsoe's back in the news, and not back in the news, but at least breaks Bledsoe's record, and that's a game that I remember from when I was 10 years old that I was at, and it, those were those days were fun, and you had Bledsoe, and you felt like, okay, we have a chance, and they go to the Super Bowl in '96, and you're like, oh my God, this is upstart team, and we'll see, and then Parcells leaves, and whatever, but then they go on this epic 20-year dynasty run,
Yep.
and it was just every year they were there. But this feels different than that, obviously, because it's not, they're not the dynasty that they were. But, this has some of that feel of those early Patriots, that 94 team. It's interesting because that 94 team is a decent comp for this team. It's a little different, obviously, but, you know, they had the number 4 pick in the draft that year as well. They drafted Willie McGinnis, who pretty good. Turned
Yeah.
out he's over the shoulder here with his autographed jersey.
He's on your wall for a reason.
Yep. So Patriots Hall of Famer and a phenomenal player for them. And Bledsoe's in his second year, and you have Parcells, who obviously was an established coach, but they go on this run and they make the playoffs, and they lose in the first round of the playoffs to Bill Belichick and the Cleveland Browns. So it's an interesting kind of parallel to where the Patriots are right now. I think that this Patriots team is better than that 1994 team. But I just thought that was it's kind of an interesting parallel to what's going on right now.
Yeah, because the most interesting thing about what's going on right now, and I'm going to preface by saying this, that I just think the schedule argument is just way out of context and just goofy to make at this point. Because when you look at it, compared to like Buffalo or even Miami, 14 of the 17 opponents everyone plays is the exact same. It's literally 3 teams that you say, oh, you know this, oh, you know that. Where I'm like, you play who's in front of you, you do what's
Right.
there. But obviously, I'm too young to remember the 90, like most of those 90s teams as I was a little one or a
Yeah.
very little one. But no, like the thing with this team that's so special is the fact, and I feel like there's gonna be a point in about a month from now that we get annoyed with because there's gonna be everyone on there that's like or even 2 months from now. Say if they get to the wild card round or divisional round, they don't get to the AFC Championship game. Most of the people outside of this fan base are going to say, oh, it's a failed season. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. You're not going to see a single Patriot fan, maybe that doesn't work for Boston radio, who doesn't think that it's a failed season. Like it's one of those
Right.
things where they're playing with house money. They've already doubled their win total from the last 2 years. They're showing a lot of promise, but then now I think the pressure would come next offseason of not how do you get better, but like how do you keep everything intact, and then as well winning those drafts, because I know the 24 draft class, look, that's heavily scrutinized, wasn't a good draft. Obviously, you hit the golden goose.
Right.
But 2026, you get the chance now to fill in the missing parts and the missing links to really elevate yourself to that contender status. Because we already know next year it's going to be the NFC North, it's going to be the AFC West. Those are going to be 6 to 8 very difficult games in there. So I think next year's but then here's the thing with that though, to where if they get off to a bad start next year, or if they don't do as well next year, everyone's gonna go, oh, see, it was a blip in the radar. Where it's just like, no, maybe they're good, maybe they're not. We don't know, but for now, just enjoy it.
Well, to your point, right, going into the season, you would think at least that the Patriots and the Bills have very similar schedules,
Yep.
right? Almost identical schedules, because the Patriots should have. Now, the Bills are playing a first place schedule, so they're playing the first place team in the AFC West. They're playing the first place team in the AFC South, and they're
Which
playing
is Thursday.
and they're playing the first place team in the
NFC East.
in the NFC East. Right. Okay. So So sure. So that one, so that's different, right? Outside of that, that's it. Also, by the way, they're playing the 4-13 Patriots, and the Patriots are playing the Bills in 2 games. So it should shake out to be a very easy schedule for the Bills as well.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the Patriots turn out to be good, and they beat the Bills the first time in Buffalo, and so on and so forth. And so, but it is kind of funny when you look at that. And look, I think for me, I'm not saying that. So going back to that '94 team, it's interesting. That '94 team was 3-6 going into the Minnesota game, and the Minnesota game is the game that I referenced. That Jacoby Brissett went 47 for 57 on Sunday, which is absolutely insane. It's the most forgettable, incredible performance you'll ever see in your entire life because they lost by 20 points. But he goes for 47 for 87. He's the first player in NFL history to attempt over 50 passes and finish with a completion percentage over 80%, which is just absurd. But Drew Bledsoe, they're playing Minnesota. They're down 20-0 against Minnesota. They kick a field goal right before half. Bledsoe's attempted 18 passes to start at halftime. Okay. And they hit the field goal down 20-3. They win 26-20 in overtime. Kevin Turner back of the end zone touchdown catch. And Drew Bledsoe finishes the game 45 for 70. He finishes with 52 passing attempts in the second half and overtime, which is just completely insane. And so that's the type of stuff where it's like, and then by the way, they rip off 7 straight wins to finish the season 10-6, and then lose in the first round of the playoffs to the Cleveland Browns 20-13. But the Bill Belichick coached Cleveland Browns. But they were the hottest team in football, kind of heading into that path, and of course they end up losing in the first round. And it takes them 1995, they missed the playoffs, and then 96, they get all the way to the Super Bowl and lose the Super Bowl, and whatever. But that was the genesis. That was the start of the way things went, right? And you mentioned the draft, right? And so you start to look at, you say, okay, the 1994 draft, pretty good, right? The 1993 draft, pretty good, right? You get Bledsoe, but you get Troy Brown in 1993, and so you can start to go back and you start to say, oh, okay, this is where you start to build. This is where you start to build that championship team, and you say, all right, yeah, 93, you draft Bledsoe, but you draft Chris Slade, and you draft Vincent Brisby, and you draft Troy Brown in the 8th round, which, by the way, doesn't exist anymore. But then 94, you really just draft Willie in that draft. But then 95, you draft Ty Law, Ted Johnson, Curtis Martin, right, and Jimmy Hitchcock, who, 4 guys that were contributors for the team. Obviously, 2 of them end up being Pro Football Hall of Famers, right? And so you say, oh, okay, well, that's why they're trying to be good. And then 96, you draft Terry Glenn, Laura Malloy, Teddy Bruschi. Yeah, that's the start of, okay, 96, you make the Super Bowl, but 5 years later in 2001, a lot of those guys are still here, and they become that core to that dynasty when Brady starts to take over, and you get a real, and Pete Carroll's a fine coach, but you get, a great coach in Bill Belichick, and you get a great quarterback in Tom Brady. And of course, I love Bledsoe, but you get that kind of generational quarterback. Obviously ends up being the GOAT quarterback, but it seems like you have that right now in Drake May. And so if you can start to stockpile some of these drafts, seems like you had a really good draft this year. Can you do that next year too? You're going to be drafting in the mid-20s next year. Can you get it? Probably. Maybe in the 30s. Probably in the mid-20s. But maybe in the 30s. You never know.
We hope in the 30s.
Right? That'd be great. But you're drafting probably in the mid-20s next year. Okay, can you hit on a guy there? Right? Can you draft a guy like Ty Law at number 23 overall? Right? Can you draft a guy there where you're like, okay, we nailed that pick, and this guy's going to help us for now and into the future. And I think, that's how you go from a good team, to a great team. And that's, look, if you look at that second run of the Patriots, the draft 2010. That's it. Starts in 2010. It really starts in 2009 with Edelman, right? But 2010, you draft McCourty and
Even
Gronkowski
2012.
and Brandon Spikes. And then, 2011, you draft Nate Solder and you draft Shane Vereen and you draft Ridley, who was good for a few years. And then 2012 was Chandler Jones and Donta Hightower and Nate Ebner, who was a contributor for a while. And then Jamie Collins. And it's like, and Logan Ryan, Jaron Harmon. And it's like every single year you're getting guys that were instrumental in that second run, and you just say, yeah, that's how you have to do it. And so the Patriots right now are playing incredible right now with not a ton of talent. You have to build that talent back up through the draft. It seems like you did a really nice job in kind of filling in some of those roles this year. The biggest problem the Patriots have is that their depth isn't great because they haven't hit on those mid to late round picks. And so getting Braden Swinson in there, who they just signed to the active roster, would be great because he's a depth player that you need, right? It seems like you hit Marcus Bryant as a swing tackle. Is he passable? Is he playable? You might need him from time to time, right? So it's like, can we get some of those guys in here that maybe they're not starters, but maybe they're fill-in guys that can play well. Can Kyle Williams develop into a speed guy that they only use 4 or 5 times a game, but he can be a game changer when he gets in there, right? So can they turn those picks into those types of guys? Joshua Farmer's kind of developing into one of those guys. He's not a starter necessarily, but he's made some good contributions as kind of that role player. And I think that if you can do that through the draft in these next few years, and you can stack good draft after good draft, it already looks like you have the quarterback. If you have the quarterback and you can stack those drafts, now that's where you start talking about, okay, now we can start to win multiple times. We can compete every year. Look what the Chiefs did for years, man. The Chiefs, they have Mahomes. They've been crushing the draft for years. And that's why they're competitive every year. Sure, you sign free agents and maybe you trade for a guy or two here and there, but you have to build through the draft. That's how you're able to keep the guys at the contracts that you have them at. And I think that the Patriots for a while have not been able to do that. It seems like they've righted the ship. We'll see, because there's a long way to go. But I think that, certainly you hit on May, and then this year I feel really good about the draft class they've had this year so far. And we'll see what happens.
And even though there was the 2023 was kind of hit or miss, the picks that they hit on still have been very solid for this team, whether it be Gonzo, Douglas, Booty, Marte Mapu as well. You just continuously finding picks to hit on. Obviously, last year at this point it's a wash. It was what it was. But
right.
And I'll say this too, though, the fact now that because the Chiefs right now are in their weird lull period where, look, they're 5-5. I'm not sure what's going on. But I'll say this though. I'm not going to count them out until they're done, but they're I still think they basically have room to lose one more game in my opinion before they really are playing backs against the wall football. But going back to the Patriots though, they have an excellent position now. So that's why I said my little piece about the playoffs where, we want playoff success, but if playoff success doesn't come this year, you're going to get, the people who just wanted to hate on us, the haters are back, but you're going to get people like yourself, me, you, myself, call it whoever you want in Patriots lore that we know and we're friends with, that will view the season as a success. Our quarterback is promising. We have an all-pro caliber corner.
Mm-hmm.
And this year with the draft, we're still waiting to see how many picks pan out, even though a bunch of them have so far. But for free agency this year, we've brought in a lot of guys people weren't necessarily sure of who have hit. Like 2 guys I want to there's one guy I could give my flowers to if it's easy, but one guy I really want to give my flowers to because he got a lot of flack when he signed here is Garrett Bradbury at center.
Yeah.
He was just the film coming out of Minnesota wasn't pretty. And this year he's been one of the best offensive line, or not best, but consistent offensive linemen throughout the year. And even the one guy said it's easy though is Matt Collins, who I know at first I was kind of high on him just for the sense of hey, bring him in. I love his little quirks, his characteristics he does now. But the fact he's gone in and done what he's done when called upon, that's what you need. So this team is trending in the right direction. This team's looking really awesome. And now we have a stretch of games where, Cincinnati Sunday, where we'll see if Jamar Chase is in the lineup. I know he was suspended, but he is appealing.
Yeah.
And then the game I more or less look at as, I don't want to say trap, but just maybe hold your breath, is the one in 2 weeks from now when they play Monday Night Football against the Giants. I know everyone's saying, the Giants are 2-9. The Giants still have a pretty good defense that could give troubles for the offensive line. And Jameis Winston's unpredictable. So we'll see what happens there. But look, the fact, too, that they can now have, and I know everyone said this for years, the AFC East is going to be competitive. But it took us getting back to having the AFC East be competitive. And
Right.
I know Bills fans are going to want to hate to hear this, but I think it's better for the NFL that the AFC East is finally a true competitive division for the first time in more than 25 years.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes a team would compete with the Patriots every now and again, right? But no one really pushed the envelope. I mean, the greatest Brady stat of all time is he never took a snap. In his entire career, he never took a snap when he was mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Like, that's just an insane statistic to think about. Like, it's crazy. The fact that in his entire Patriots career, the Patriots never finished with a worse record than anyone in the AFC East. Now, they did lose the AFC East a few times because of tiebreakers, but they never finished with a worse record. And that's the type of stuff where it's like, my goodness, like that's what they did for years. And the Bills got to be pissed that, that they didn't take advantage of their opportunities, because you feel like the Patriots are gone. And you had that 13 seconds game against the Chiefs. And that's just, I mean, unfortunately, that's a problem, right? But it's just like, unfortunately, that just is what it is, man. And you had opportunities and you had chances and you were unable to get there. For whatever reason, you were unable to get there. And it doesn't mean they'll ever get there again. No. But if the Patriots are going to be consistently good, it makes your life more difficult. And I think you're seeing that with the Chiefs this year, because it's a war of attrition. If you have to play challenging games every single week, that's hard. If you're playing against the AFC West and the Chargers are pretty good and the Broncos are pretty good and, and the Raiders are terrible, but you're playing 4 hard games a year regardless of whoever else you're playing, right? And so that makes it difficult for you to win those games, right? And now the Chiefs sit here, and to your point, Chiefs sit here at 5-5, and you're like, I don't know. There's enough teams in front of them that there's a realistic chance that they miss the playoffs. Now, they could win out and finish 12-5 and they were in the playoffs, right? Like that, the Chiefs could obviously do that, but they have a little bit of a challenging schedule ahead of them. If they lose 1 or 2 more of these games, if they're 9-7, they might get in, but they might not. Now, the Steelers, looks like Aaron Rodgers might be hurt, so that is a problem, right? But if the Jaguars can be at least semi-competitive, like if they finish the season 10-6, I think the Chiefs might miss the playoffs. And that's wild to think about. Don't forget the Jaguars have the tiebreaker over the Chiefs because they beat the Chiefs this year. So they have to finish with a better record than the Jaguars, not the same record. And that's crazy. Imagine if the Jaguars are the team that knock out the Chiefs out of the playoffs. It'd be incredible. I still think they make the playoffs, but there's at least a chance. And in week 12 or, where are we, week 11? Like no one would have been thinking that.
So my thing with the Chiefs has just been, like, I know the first couple games they lost, I'm like, okay, because I was always kind of keen on why did Travis Kelce come back. I still think he's good, but Chris Jones is, there's some moments where I'm like, I'm not saying he's not elite anymore, but like, has he lost his fastball? Where it's kind of like, I always hear the famous Lawrence Taylor quote of, oh man, these guys are really fast and they're getting fast, and everyone's just like, no, Lawrence, you're just getting old and you're on the verge of that. But my thing with them is just the fact that, and this happened yesterday too in their game against Denver, when they needed that, because they've been their first part, I'd say their first, like from when Patrick Mahomes debuted to like I'd say 2021 or the 22 playoffs they lost to Cincy.
Yeah,
was predicated on that offense.
Yep.
And then eventually they switched to where the defense they were relying on to making plays. The other thing too that I learned today was that this year they're 0-5 in 1-score games, which last year they were 11-0. So the horseshoe is not exactly lodged up, where.
Yeah.
But the thing with them too, though, is like, And my biggest thing was, how was Patrick going to change at 30? I just, because like, as we know with Brady, as his career went on, as his legacy got better, he learned how to improve and get better and stay healthier. But for Patrick, like even like there was the one sack yesterday that he took where, yeah, the guy got him a little high, but I don't like him right away going like this, like pointing to his head, like looking, like fishing for a call or diving for a call. But then even with Buffalo, and I'll talk about Buffalo in a bit, but with Kansas City though, I'll say this: they're still in a good spot, but they have 3 games coming up. I'm going to write the Dallas game off just because.
Yeah.
But the games against Houston, Indy, and the Chargers.
Yeah.
If they go worse than 2-1 in those games, I honestly think 10-7 is going to be worst case scenario to get into the playoffs. I think 10-7 is you might see a 10-7 team miss, and for teams like Houston, Baltimore, that's the other thing too. That Houston Kansas City game, that's pretty much, if you lose that game, you are relying then on like, hey, you need like 3 teams to lose, and you got to win out. Which Kansas City, I know they still have to play Tennessee. They get Denver again on Christmas night, which that game. That's what a nightcap.
The good news for the Chiefs is that they have 4 challenging games left.
Yeah.
And all 4 of those games are at home. That's so you have the Colts this Sunday.
Yep.
Where then you host the Texans, you host the Chargers the week after that, and then as you said, you host the Broncos on Christmas Day. That's as challenging as those 4 games look like they might be, and the Colts might be a tough task because they're coming off their bye. Like that's a tough game. But as hard as that game is, you look at it and say, yeah, okay, well, but we're at home. And so you have to feel good about that if you're the Chiefs. And yeah, you get to 11-6. You get to 10-7. 10-7 probably gets you in. The thing is that, as I said, the Jaguars are 6-4. The Texans are 5-5. But if you just do the math, you say, okay, the Patriots and Bills are going to make the playoffs. So there's 2. Someone's going to win the AFC North. Okay, there's 3. The Colts are in. There's 4.
The Broncos.
The Broncos are in. There's 5. If the Chargers are in, there's 6. Now the 7th team is going to be either the Chiefs, the Jaguars, the Texans, or the other AFC North team that doesn't win. And so there's a lot of teams fighting for that last spot, right? And again, the Chargers, I think, after losing this week, who the heck knows what the Chargers are going to do? But I think that the Chargers probably will get. So there you are. All those teams now are fighting for that spot.
Yep.
Is that other team the Jaguars, right? Is that other team the Texans? Is that, who knows? And that's where it gets really interesting, because the Ravens have to play the Steelers twice. Do they split with the Ravens? Do the Ravens and the Steelers split? And now, is that enough to get that second AFC North team in? And so anyways, it's a fascinating look at, where the teams are at right now and who's going to be the team to make the playoffs. The AFC is so wide open right now. And that kind of bottom, because here's a nightmare scenario. The nightmare scenario for the Patriots is that the Colts finish as the number 1 seed, the Patriots finish as the number 2 seed, and the Chiefs finish as the number 7 seed. That's the nightmare scenario, because then you're hosting Kansas City week 1 of the playoffs. And I love what the Patriots are doing. I love Drake May. I think the Patriots can compete with anyone in any game. I would not be picking them to win that game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the Chiefs, right? And I know they haven't been that good this year, but you have to believe that when the clock turns around and now it becomes the playoffs, like that they're gonna be the Chiefs again, right? And so that's not ideal. That's not an ideal scenario for the Patriots.
No. And I was also, while you were talking as well, I just wanted to see, what do the Chargers have coming up? So they have the Raiders coming out of the bye, who I thought was going to be like a team I want to talk about in a second, but no, they're just terrible, and they're getting their butts kicked right now.
Yeah.
But then they have the Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, and Broncos to finish the season, where they have to go to Arrowhead, they have to go to Dallas, and say what you want about Dallas. I still think Dallas is not an easy game for anyone. Yep. And then they have to go to Denver for the last week of the season, which I think very well, worst case scenario, is going to be 4:00 on the Sunday, but it very well could be one of the Saturday spots. Or it's Sunday Night Football potentially for the division, because we have to remember the Chargers are still 3-0 in division play. And if the Chargers can somehow catch up to the Broncos, the Broncos kind of teeter, which I'm not saying they're going to, because like I'm looking at the Broncos, they still have to play the Raiders, but they also have to play the Packers, the Jags, the Chiefs, and the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of tough football there for the Broncos. And I know everyone's saying, oh, this and this, and they had a great win yesterday. But with the Broncos, I still need, like, for example, go into and they play the Commanders, which, good Lord, flex that out of Sunday Night Football. Yeah, there's a topic of conversation for that. I still think the Patriots game that we play against the Ravens does get either the 425 or the Sunday Night Football spot, because
I think so too.
It is Bengals Dolphins right now, but like no one needs to see that. But with this little Broncos stuff right now, just I want to see them go into Kansas City on Christmas night and win.
Yeah,
because it's one thing to win at home, but that's like why the Patriots have my trust. Because why? They went into Buffalo and snatched their chain, and then Tampa, I know, had a really bad day yesterday, and Josh Allen made that offense look silly, or that defense look silly, excuse me. But Drake went into Tampa and won, and still kind of, the thing I'm proud of the most of that game is the fact that the defense made, for as wonky as the defense has been, the defense made a stop when it mattered most. But just going back to it, I think no matter what we get, and I'll say this with Buffalo too, I still think they're good. I know the sky was falling last week when they did not show up to that game. They're still good, but I just don't think that they're, and I'm not saying they need a head coaching change, but I'm just like, I just don't see that from them this year at the moment, unless they like run, because for all we know too, if they like 7-3, 9-2, they're still breathing down the necks of the Patriots, so anything can happen. But I think no matter who gets in the playoffs from the AFC, it's going to be a dogfight to get to Santa Clara.
Listen, I'm gonna say it. Yeah. I'm gonna say it. If they don't get to the Super Bowl this year, they need a coaching change. That's it. Like they are as good as they can get to be right now. Now, I will say, Josh Allen doesn't have the weapons that he needs. I get that, right? I know that the receiving core isn't as good as you want it to be, and they have some very good tight ends, but the receiving core isn't up to snuff. That's fine. That goes back to the GMs not drafting the right guys, but nevertheless, right? And listen, as we talk about the Patriots, of course, missing on Jalen Polk, it's like, yeah, the Bills took Keon Coleman, right? Like, it's not like they were the only teams to miss. And by the way, the Chiefs aren't even using Xavier Worthy. So it seems like everyone missed on wide receiver except for the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's one of those situations where you start to look at it and you say, all right, well, like, yeah, maybe he doesn't have necessarily all the pieces that he needs. But they needed a running game for a long time. They have a fantastic running back in James Cook. You're telling me you can't get them over the hump? Like, you got to be able to get them over the hump. And it just seems like when it comes to these big games, what you're doing is you're 9 times out of 10, you're saying, all right, Josh, go save us. Go win the game for us. And that's not coaching. That's not like elite coaching. Just saying, hey, go make a play, man. Go make some magic happen. And he can do it. He has the ability to do it. But why not have a coach that can actually coach, and then the extra stuff that Josh does is just icing on the cake.
Yep.
And that's how you become that, feared dominant team, and they're just not doing that. Like, Brady had a ton of games where he took over and just won games for the Patriots. But there were also a ton of games where they're like, hey, man, we're good, dude. We're going to run down this team's throat. You don't have to worry about it. Our offense is going to pitch it. Our defense is going to pitch a shutout, basically. You just got to make a few plays when it matters. Okay, I can do that. I can put the team on my back too, and we can win some games, but we can also win some games when I can't put the team on my back, right? And I think that, that comes from the coaching staff, and far too often in Buffalo, the coaching staff doesn't have the answers. And, I don't know. The challenging thing is, if you fire the coach, you might not get a great guy the next time around. And that's a risk. But you have to ask yourself, he's had all these opportunities. He's never gotten there. Are we ever going to get there with this guy? Our goal isn't to make the playoffs. Our goal isn't to finish 12-5 and win the AFCs. That's not our goal. Our goal is to win a Super Bowl. Do we realistically think that we can win one with him? And maybe we can. Maybe we can. But this is a situation where, especially this year with the Chiefs aren't that good.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that irks me, that would really upset me if I were a Bills fan, you seem to beat the Chiefs every year in the regular season. You seem to do it every year in the regular season. You can do it. You can do it. Then you get to the playoffs and you can't do it. That's got to be very frustrating. And so, are they not changing enough from game to game? Or, the Chiefs scheming up things that they know are going to be hard for you to stop? So it's all those questions that we don't have an answer to. I don't know what the answer is, but if I were a Bills fan, if I don't win the Super Bowl this year, or if I don't at least get to the Super Bowl this year, I'm looking for a new head coach. That's, in my mind, that's what I'd be doing.
So my whole thing with them was just, who are you going to find that's better? But you know what? Sometimes you got to look at that risk and assess it.
Mm-hmm.
With basketball metaphors, Raptors went through it, won them a championship. Who's the other team? Celtics, to a degree. I know there was some other stuff behind the scenes.
Obviously, some other stuff happens, but still.
There was still some other stuff. But hey, look, they got a new coaching change. They got a championship out of it. So sometimes, and also too, with the whole thing when you say that about bad coaching, there's only certain players, I think, of certain elks, like a Mahomes, like a Brady, to a basketball extent, like a LeBron James, that you can go out there and say, hey, you do you, because we know you can go out there and win us a game on any given night. So I think that's where that one's different. But with the Bills right now, for them to basically say, hey, Josh, you got to go win us this game because our defense is just letting Sean Tucker abuse us. Our defense, got Daquan Jones got stiff-armed by Drake May there, which made Collinsworth chuckle. That's a play. There's two Patriots plays from this year that I'll never forget. It's that one, and it's the booty throw against Cleveland, where it's just a dime in the a dime in the bucket.
Yeah. Yep.
Where it's just like, oh my God. But no, with Buffalo though, you have the season where you're closing your stadium. You are getting ready to move into a new stadium. I think you got to do everything in your power to try to win this year, because you want to, imagine this, even if they get to the playoffs and say they get to the AFC Championship game, they don't get to host a single home game. They might be happy to be in the playoffs, but deep down that every Bills fan and everyone in that organization wants them to have a playoff game in Orchard Park. If they have to go on the road to do it, hey, it's still, you're playing great football. You want to close your stadium, not in the regular season. You want to close your stadium in the postseason.
Yeah, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles are a really interesting case here, because the Andy Reid, and they had him forever. And of course, they get to the 4 straight conference championships. They lose 3 of them. They get to the Super Bowl. Their 4th one they win. They get to the Super Bowl and lose, right? Then they make the playoffs a few other times. Well, they fire Andy Reid after the 2012 season. Now, Andy Reid goes 4-12 in 2012. It was a disaster, right? But they hired Chip Kelly. That doesn't work out. But 2016, they hired Doug Peterson. In 2017, they win the Super Bowl. Peterson doesn't work out, so they move on. Now they have Nick Sirianni, and they've made 2 Super Bowls and won one of them with Sirianni. Andy Reid, meanwhile, goes to Kansas City and wins. It takes him a little while to win a good amount of games. He has Alex Smith. He's got a bunch of championships now with Patrick Mahomes. It was a good break for both of them. Turns out Andy Reid, Hall of Fame coach, really good. Was it time for the Eagles to move on? It was. Now, they had that one terrible year where at least they could say to their fan base, hey, we crash and burn this year. Right. And so we have to do a hard reset and start over again. Do you want to do that? If you're the Bills, are you going to sit around and wait until you crash and burn one year? What are you doing? You have Josh Allen.
Yep.
If he's not the best quarterback in the league, he's certainly the top 3 to 5. I don't care who you are, what you do. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Argue with a wall. I don't care. The guy's incredible. So you have to maximize the opportunity you have with that guy. If you don't believe you can win the Super Bowl with your current coach, you fire and move on. That's it. I don't care how good he is. Sean McDermott might get a job and he might win Super Bowl somewhere else, but you have to trust that you can find the next guy and that guy can come in and win with this group of players. And, that at least that's where I'm at with the Bills at this point. Listen, it is what it is. I just don't I don't see how they can keep doing the same thing with the same guy and expect different results.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. It's literally as simple as that. There was one because when you go now and you look at the NFC landscape of things, you don't have that scenario as in which I just want to try because with Buffalo, but the only high risk, high reward thing with them is the fact if you look at what their hockey team's been, it's just been in disarray for God knows how long.
Ever.
Yeah, forever. Since 2011. But basically, if Terry, there's just an alternate universe to where if Terry doesn't get Bean and McDermott and two competent football guys, it's not exactly, sunshines and rainbows in Orchard Park. Like it's like, remember, there was a time period with Rex Ryan and Doug Whaley, and they didn't really do much there.
It's true.
Just want to talk to you about the NFC for a second because there's a team who I didn't really have expectation on, but I've always been I want to use the word keen on for a lot of the year, and they're starting to mold. And that's the Carolina Panthers. Like, who knew it took them getting their ass kicked by us to really put them into high gear? But the most interesting stat I found out, it was actually through one of my Monday listening of Part of My Take, that Bryce Young has a bunch of 300. He has now a 400-yard game, and he has a bunch of 100 yards. He never has I don't believe he's ever had a 200-yard thrown game in his NFL career. But also, since 2023, it's not through this podcast, not the Part of My Take, but just on NFL. Since 2023, he now has the most comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks since 2023 in the NFL at 10.
Which is insane. It's an insane stat. And I don't know about his career. I do know that he hasn't had a 200-yard passing game this year. He had 199.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's this year.
Yeah, but they're a fascinating team, man, because, they get blown out by us 42-13. Then they rip off 3 in a row. Now they're playing the Dolphins, the Cowboys, and the Jets. But still, when you're that bad of a team, like you're winning those 3 games, great. They get absolutely destroyed by the Bills. So they come back and beat the Packers, of course. They lose to a terrible Saints team and then beat the Falcons in overtime. And that Falcons, the Falcons are...
Oh, that's a house cleaning waiting to happen.
What a disaster that team is.
That's a house
they traded their first round pick too, and they can say they like James Pierce all they want. That's a disaster. If that's a top 5 pick, that's a horrendous trade for them. And Michael Penix looks like he's going to have his fifth season-ending knee injury.
Count them 5.
Not ideal. Not good for your second-year quarterback to be on his 5th season-ending knee injury. It's just, and this is a bone bruise. Anyways, it's a mess. But to your point with the Panthers, they're slate, man. I'm going to tell you something. If they make the playoffs, they are for real. Because they end the season with at the 49ers, hosting the Rams, at the Saints, easy, hosting the Bucks, hosting the Seahawks, at the Bucks. That is an absolute gauntlet. You're talking about, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, and 5 of those games are against teams with winning records that are probably going to be in the playoffs. And some of them those are some of the best teams in the NFL. And it's like,
they also got Monday Night Football, that San Francisco game next week.
Yes. And you're just like, oh my God, like if they are able to make the playoffs, we can look back at that Panthers team and say, holy crap, this team actually turned out to be a really good team. Now, do I think that's going to necessarily be the case? Not necessarily, but they could. And that's what makes it really fascinating is you sit there and you say, okay, well, they could win those games. And I think that, this is a team that is I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them. I think that, there's a chance at least that they can make some noise, and that's really fun. That's a lot of fun, I think. So we'll see. But I like it.
They've hit on their picks. Like Xavier Legette is a great receiver. Tet McMillan's the real deal. But then also too having Hubbard, Dowdle in getting those guys in the running back. And with Bryce Young too, like I'm not saying next year, hey, you give him a bag and you give that, but I think you definitely pick up the 5th-year option. I think you just you do that, you see where you want to go. Obviously, the current regime of Dave Canales and Dan Morgan didn't draft him, but David Tepper's always been very high on him. You also hear a lot less of David Tepper, which is kind of interesting. When owners kind of shoo away, teams do better. It's a wonderful little microcosm of the National Football League, except for Indy, but she deserves all the flowers in the world.
I agree.
But with the Panthers, though, even if they miss the playoffs this year and say they go 8-9, 9-8. You're not going to see, it's like us, you're not going to see a single disappointed Panthers fan because for the first time in God knows how long, they have a product they can be proud of. Probably since Cam Newton was quarterback.
Yeah, and honestly, for me at least, you're just trying to build that defense up. If I'm Carolina, I'm trying to build the defense up to make it a little bit better. Maybe work on the offensive line as well with some of those mid-tier picks. But, trying to build your defense up from where you are and – hope that Bryce Young kind of takes that next step with Tet. And, and the get is interesting because he almost like he was a lost cause to start the year. And, he has turned it on a little bit. He's an interesting guy because, I almost thought, I'm like, this guy's going to get benched and he's not going to play the rest of the year. And all of a sudden he's putting up big numbers. And I'm like, oh, okay. Apparently Xavier gets not benched. It's Carolina is a fascinating team. The NFC as a whole is really interesting because you get the NFC East, which is just a train wreck outside of Philadelphia. And you get the NFC North, which has 3 teams that are all pretty good, but we don't know how good, right? And you get the NFC South, which has 2 teams that have winning records. And then you get the NFC West, which has 3 incredible teams.
And 1 bad one.
And 1 really bad one, right? And so it's like, who the heck's going to make the playoffs? Because if the Niners keep doing what they're doing, that's 3 teams in the NFC West. That's 3 out of 7 right there. Yeah. That means that 3 other division winners, there's 6. You got 1 other spot. And so is that going to be Carolina? Is that going to be the Packers or the Lions? You're talking about the Packers or the Lions missing the playoffs right now. And that's where it's like, okay, like the NFC's really good. And so it's going to be difficult to kind of predict what happens, but those NFC playoff games are going to be awesome because, you look at the Rams and the Rams are a ton of fun.
That defense is really good.
That defense is awesome. The Seahawks defense is awesome. I mean, how many times do you have a game where your quarterback throws 4 interceptions? 4.
Cover the spread. They cover the 2.5.
Well, I was going to say, and you're lining up to kick a game-winning field goal. Now, it's a 65-yard field goal, but you're still lining up to kick a game-winning field goal at the end of the game after your quarterback throws 4 interceptions. So, that just doesn't happen without a really good defense. Seattle's defense is for real. The Rams defense is for real. The Eagles defense is for real. The Bears defense, I think 3 out of the top 4 interception leaders in the
Kevin
league
Byard is the leader.
all play for the Bears. It's crazy. So they're turning the ball over at a crazy rate. The Packers defense is really good. The Buccaneers defense is pretty darn good. The Niners defense, the NFC is just loaded with good defenses and really good offenses. That's going to be an absolute slog in that playoffs. And whoever makes it out of there is going to be battle tested or worn down. One or the other. I'm not sure what that's going to say about that team going into the Super Bowl.
There is an alternate universe where the Lions, Chiefs, and Ravens all don't make the playoffs.
I know.
That's still a very real possibility.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Out of all those teams, though, you said one. I think the Packers are the one to worry about with coordinator losing, because I do think Jeff Hafley is going to get head coach consideration in this next cycle. But the one team you mentioned earlier, and look, they have so much talent, but Atlanta's got to cut it loose, just, not just Raheem Morris, but also Terry Fontenot, because, you have all this talent and you basically beat the Bills, and then after you beat the Bills, it's kind of like, okay, what have you done for me lately? The defense, hey, they make some plays, but it's kind of like, eh. But the one team, though, that I've really disappointed in, and I honestly think that by 27 they're going to have a new quarterback, is Arizona. I think just Kyler needs to go somewhere else. I don't know where that somewhere else is, but maybe Cleveland. But for him, just they need somewhere else. Because I think it's either, you got to get rid of Kyler or Jonathan Gannon's out of a job. I think you got to get rid of both, to be honest with you. I just don't know how you put Kyler back in there as starting quarterback. I just don't. I mean, it was horrendous with him at quarterback. He hasn't been the same since he tore his ACL in that game against us.
Right. And that's how many years ago now? And Jacoby Brissett goes in. And the offense is running smoothly. I mean, for the love of God, Marvin Harrison Jr. is your number one target. You drafted him number 4 overall in the draft last year.
Did you hear what his dad said?
No.
His dad basically said that if I was playing for this current Cardinals team, or if I was playing like my son, they can't ask me for my jacket back.
Yeah.
And his dad doesn't talk to the media often.
Right.
That was one thing about him.
And so, listen, he had his career high in receptions was 6 before Jacoby Brissett took over, and instantly in the first game peppered him with targets. What were you doing, Kyler Murray? Throw the ball to your best receiver. What's wrong with you? It's crazy to me. And then he's hurt. So what do? They go to Michael Wilson for, who finishes with the most receiving yards of any player this year in 2025. Jacoby Brissett has the ability to spread the ball around and give the ball to guys, get guys open, and then throw guys open. He's not a great quarterback, but I think it's very telling how much better this Arizona offense looks with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback than Kyler Murray.
Yep.
And so, to me, you got to cut bait with him. And again, I think Gannon is right there with him. I think you just start over. You fire the coach, you cut the quarterback or trade the quarterback or whatever, shed that contract somehow, and you tread water. Maybe you draft a quarterback this year. If you don't get the number 1 pick, which I don't know if they're going to get the number 1 pick at this point, but maybe they do. Who knows? Maybe you trade up for the number 1 pick and you try to get Mendoza. I'm not sure. But it's an interesting spot that they're in. I mean, it's not an advantageous spot, but honestly, you might be in a better situation than the Falcons are. I think the Falcons might have one of the worst situations in football because you're talking about Penix, a guy that has a ton of injury history, that now has been injured again and looks okay when he's out there, but not great. You don't have a first-round pick coming into this year. You got a ton of weapons, and you're unable to use them. You're looking at this saying, well, what the hell? What can we do? And I would just clean house. And I'm looking at it saying, we have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. Those guys should be dominating. Right. Those guys should be dominating all week, every week, every single game. Those 3 guys should be dominating every single game. The fact that we don't have a great offense tells me that our offensive coordinator and our head coach stink. They both got to go, and we got to figure something out because we can't keep drafting guys in the top 7 or top 5 or top 10 and have them all be skill position guys and have your offense still stink. We can't have that happen. And so, to me, you got to clean house and start fresh in Atlanta. And again, it makes it more difficult because you don't have a first round pick this year.
Yeah. No. That's because the thing with the Falcons too, and that's why I was trying to allude to it, because Drake London needs a contract.
Yep.
Bijan Robinson needs a new contract. That is you hand him if you're Arthur Blank, you hand him a blank check.
Right.
You put whatever is on whatever number he writes down or his agent writes down, which could start with a 3, and people are gonna think I'm crazy for that, but it very well could.
Here's the question, right? If you're the Falcons and you're not there yet, and your offensive line is fine but not great, and you don't think the quarterback is the answer, does it make sense to sign Bijan Robinson to a long-term contract? Or does it make sense to put him up for sale and see what happens? What if someone comes out and gives you 2 first-round draft picks for Bijan Robinson?
I think you do it. I honestly think you do it. I just you said it. I always just thinking that though, because I do think though someone would give him $25 to $30 million if there's a team who's on the precipice of contending or a contender.
He also does everything well. He's not just a running back. He's a running back and a receiver. He has the ability to be a Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
They just suck at using him. So it's
I have one fantasy league where I got lucky and managed to get the 2 of them through trade, and both of them put up 30 plus yesterday. Which
that's helpful.
Another point of San Francisco. I know the defense has been really banged up, but I think we're being reminded of 2 things with them. One, when they have decent health, which I still think the rest of the team got hurt to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy.
Yep.
But Robert Saleh is still a very good defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's just one point I wanted to make there. Even just saying that yesterday, I know we were harping on we were we were talking smack about the Birds, but no, it goes to the point of just like this year's season, this year's playoffs. It's anyone can win. It's anyone's game. But going back now to when we're saying about paying everyone, the Patriots obviously still have money left this year.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have a problem where they got to fork out $65 million in 2 years because Drake wants that, that's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have too. And I know you're active. We're both active on TikTok.
Yep.
I haven't mentioned this too much. I haven't mentioned this on the podcast, but have you ever seen one and Michael May's TikTok channel?
No.
Well, that is Drake's wife. I'm going to send you.
Yeah. I've seen, so I haven't actually watched the videos, but I have seen the comments. They're hysterical.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
More than the comments, like one was that if you feed him that, rub his belly for proper digestion, and the whole, do you love your husband as much as I love your husband? It's the comments where someone was just like, oh, Giselle never baked for us. Oh, Giselle never took us anywhere. I'm just like, oh my God.
Well, then someone said something like, this is the Drake May of videos. And then some guy was like, you know what? I love that comment. That's the Drake May of comments. And then someone else responds like, that's a great comment on a comment. That's a Drake May of comment on a comment. And then it just keeps going. And I'm like, oh my God. My favorite one though was someone commented on her video or whatever and was like, don't let Drake eat too much, but let him eat as much as he wants. It's just like so stupid. But I was like, that's hysterical.
So I had to take some snapshots to someone the other day, basically actually our mutual friend McGarvin, just because he doesn't have TikTok, so I wanted to show him some of the stuff. And one of them was the way that Drake is going to eat that apple cider donut loaf is probably so tough. It's good to know our queen feeds the new king of New England.
This is so great.
Who is Drake May? For the blind, he is light. For the hungry, he is bread. For the sick, he is the cure. For the lonely, he is company. For the sad, he is joy. For the prisoner, he is freedom. For the poor, he is treasure. For me, he is everything. If Drake May talks, I listen.
It's just so ridiculous. But what I love is that it's not, and I'm sure there are some on there, it's silly and it's kind of over the top, but it's not creepy. Yes. It doesn't, because very quickly people can get into the creepy side of it. And it's like, no, we don't need that. No, thank you. Like, let's just be like silly and accepting, and we can make jokes about how he's the best, and we can talk about him like he's, Chuck Norris and do all that stuff. Like, that's cool. That's okay. Just don't make it creepy. And so far, people have done a good job of not making it creepy, and I appreciate that.
One more question before we get out of here with the MVP, because look, the MVP talk's the MVP talk. I still think that if they win the division, if they are the 1 or 2 seed, he's seriously going to be considered for MVP.
Yes. Yep.
My question is starting to become coach of the year, because for as much as I think Mike Vrabel can get it, I think there's a world where Shane Steichen can win it. Yep. Sean Payton can win it. But the one that we were talking about, because if they win the division and get in the playoffs, I think it's Dave Canales' award to lose at this point. If they win it on the caveat that they win the division and make the play. I think even if they get in the playoffs as a wild card, I still think it might be his award.
If they make the playoffs, again, you look at the schedule down the stretch. If they make the playoffs, I think Canales is the guy. He has to be, because that team came out of nowhere. Not only did they come out of nowhere, that team was actively failing in the middle of the season.
They were left for dead after we beat the shit out of them.
Right. And to right the ship, and again, you're talking about these last games. They're all challenging games. Right, you go into Lambeau and win. If you can win a few of these games and make the playoffs, loaded NFC, I think that, the Canales one is really interesting. I think Vrabel has a shot at it. I think Steichen probably wins. I think May has a shot at MVP, as you mentioned. I think it's probably going to end up being Matthew Stafford.
I'm in that same boat. I'm in that exact same boat. I said that last week.
And I think the big thing for me with Stafford is that I know that the supporting cast for Drake May is not as good. Stafford's is far superior to Drake May's, and I get that. But I think one of the things, and the Athletic Pod talked about this, and I think it makes a ton of sense, is that it's not a legacy award, Right? It's not. It's not a legacy award.
No,
However,
for
if you're
Stafford,
looking,
it's his like. Sorry to cut you off, but for Stafford,
that's fine.
it's his like cherry on top of a resume to get into Canton.
Correct. He's been a very good quarterback for a really long time.
Yeah.
He came to LA and instantly won a Super Bowl, right? Like he's that guy, and he's been that guy for a long time. He never got the flowers in Detroit, and he was good in LA, but he got overshadowed by Cooper Kupp, and he got overshadowed by this guy, and and they were always good, but he was never. He's having his best statistical season ever, and he's playing incredible. If him and May are neck and neck,
it's Stafford.
It's probably Stafford, right? I think that May has played a little bit better than him. But if the two of them are neck and neck, I think it goes to Stafford because of the fact that he's been around for so long. Drake May, God willing, has more chances to win the MVP, right? Like if it's neck and neck between the two of them and you have to choose, how do I choose a decider between the two of them? I think it probably goes to Stafford. So we'll see. There's a long way to go here. We still got 6 weeks left in the season, but 7 weeks, I guess, left in the season. But but we'll see ultimately what ends up happening. But I think it's probably going to end up being a two-man race. Donald's out. You can't throw 4 interceptions in a game and win MVP. You just can't do it. Nope. So Sam Donald's out. Jonathan Taylor, I think, has a shot. If Jonathan Taylor scores 28 touchdowns or something stupid like that, rushes for 28 touchdowns, like you kind of have to consider giving the MVP. I know it's a quarterback award, but like if he's scoring over 30 touchdowns, you don't really have a choice. Like you got to give him for the freaking MVP, And so, so that could be interesting how that shakes out down the stretch for the Colts too. So, I think really it's the three of them. And look, Josh Allen. I mean, he put up 6 touchdowns on Sunday. He's what the second guy. He's done it. He's the only guy in NFL regular season history to score to have 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns. And Otto Graham did it in the championship game, right, in 1950 something or whatever. Sure. But it's in the regular season, he's the only guy to ever do it, and he's done it twice. So, and Josh Allen's incredible. Don't get me wrong. Like everyone knows that, but I think it's probably a 2-man race with if Taylor can do something crazy at the end of the year, then he gets it instead.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I do think Taylor's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year is another award I think is really up in the air. Although even though his team is terrible, Myles Garrett's making an appearance.
He's got to be the Defensive Player of the Year. He's incredible.
Yeah, but with MVP though, like, and I cut you off saying it earlier, but with Matthew Stafford though, like I think the voters will look at him and say, because remember in July, no one knew if he was what he was going to be because he was like hurt, but. Also, too, as of yesterday, he is now officially 116, 115, and 1. So he is above 500 for the first time in his career.
Let's go.
But the thing with him is, though, when you now look at, because for years was always, he could get into Canton, but like he adds on top of all of his stuff. He's also probably going to be, I don't know if he'll get to top 5 or top 4 for passing yards. He'll definitely crack top 8. I believe he's already cracked the top 10, but it's a matter of how high can he get. I believe he's like 7th or 8th right now. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, but it's somewhere around there. You're right. But it's interesting to see, and I think that Stafford's a guy that, deserves it. And again, the way that he's playing this year, he's having his best statistical season, and he's a phenomenal statistical quarterback. So when you kind of put all that stuff together, I think it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And again, what is it about? It's about the narratives, right? Like that's part of it, is that the narratives are there as well. If Stafford is leading the Rams to, one of their best seasons ever, and he's having his best statistical season ever at the same time, I think then that's enough, to help him win the award. Now, if the Patriots finish 15-2 and win out the rest of the way, and Drake May keeps playing the way he's playing, well, there's another narrative as well. And so obviously things can happen. If Jonathan Taylor scores 30 offensive touchdowns this year and breaks the record for, well, now he might have a game. But, it's what are those storylines going to look like? And I think the Matthew Stafford storylines are going to be very compelling come the end of the year.
So he's currently, I just got it through ESPN. So he is in the top 10. He is ninth right now.
Mhm.
He is at 62,366, which the next one is 62,792, which is Matt Ryan. So he should pass Matt Ryan probably the next couple games.
Yep.
But then, like, I don't think and then I think best case scenario for him is if he plays another year, he could probably get to Aaron Rodgers, who's in fifth right now. But then after that, it's Peyton and Favre both at 71K.
Yeah.
Drew Brees, who is going into Canton this year over Eli Manning, argue with a wall, at 80,358. And then all the way in first place at 89,214 is Tom Brady.
Wild. Just wild. So,
the other fun fact, too, is the fact that Kirk Cousins is 20th on that list.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me. And that's unfortunately what's going to end up happening is that it's going to be all these passing error quarterbacks are going to be in that top 20, basically all of them. And all the other guys are going to get pushed out because this is what the NFL has turned into. Guys are throwing for 3,000, 4,000 yards a season like it's nothing. And that was not the case. And they're also playing for longer. They're playing for longer than the guys in the 90s because they're protected more. So yes. I think that matters too. So
no, it does. But as I switched over to the football game, which Jesus Christ, yeah, the Raiders are just bad.
Yeah.
You're getting your butts kicked by the Dallas Cowboys. That's a red flag for disaster if you're bad. But on the 408th episode of this wonderful podcast, Pat Lane and I got to chum it up by a variety of topics. Sunday, I look at that game where one of my friends, Patriot fans, texted me about Sunday, just being like, "Oh, it's Jamar Chase being out," and I said this to them. I already wasn't too worried about that because no Cameron Taylor-Britt, no Trey Hendrickson. Jamar Chase, like, he was probably getting a matchup with Gonzalez anyway, where I wasn't like totally concerned about it. And there's that. And then the only thing I'll say we're talking about Chiefs Colts Sunday, because I still say this with the Colts, as long as Jonathan Taylor, the Colts should win football games. It's just, how do you make if they can disrupt Daniel Jones and make that offense one-dimensional, that's how the Chiefs will win. They are -3.5 right now, but I really have a big trust issue with the Chiefs on spreads. People say, "Oh, they win." No, they don't. They do a terrible job covering spreads. They have all their dynasty. But no, for Sunday's game, I still think the Patriots win. I just don't know if it's a complete whooping. I think you're going to start seeing more of these games where it's kind of like hold your breath, but not panic. Hold your breath,
Yeah, I agree with you. And that Chiefs game is going to be really fascinating this weekend. And so we'll see. Again, it's bordering on a must-win for the Chiefs, because if they lose that game and drop to 5-6, you're on the outside looking in. That's just and you can win out, obviously, but the vibes are going to be awfully low in Kansas City if that happens. And now you're talking about trying to right the ship and get back into the playoffs and sneak into the playoffs at that point. And if you're the Colts, like, then you're 9-2, and then the question is, do the Patriots beat the Bengals? Which I think the Patriots are going to crush the Bengals. The Bengals have no offense; they have no defense whatsoever. Joe Burrow's still out. Chase is out. Hendrickson is out still, and so you look at it and just say, Drake May. I think Drake May is going to crack 300 yards this weekend for the first time in his career.
Please,
I just think I just think it's going to be a bloodbath, and the Patriots are focused. They are, the vibe check in New England. Robert Spillane getting up and talking about how, hey, we're all excited for this weekend, but I expect to see like 30, 40, 50 guys in here getting treatment, getting some lifts in this weekend, even though, we're technically off. That's the type of stuff. That's the culture that you're trying to build here. That's the culture that Vrabel's trying to build here. And I think that ultimately is why they're playing the way that they're playing right now. These guys get along really well, and they have that culture built in. Now, that can only take you so far. At some point, talent wins, but the Patriots playing with their talented players are playing extremely well right now. And so if you can continue that strategy and you continue that going on, and when some of your role players can step up and make some plays, now all of a sudden you have a chance. And if in the NFL, it's one game. The NBA is a 7-game series.
Yep.
A 7-game series, the best team almost always wins a 7-game series. In a 1-game playoff, the best team doesn't always win. And so, you have a chance against anyone. And the way the Patriots are playing, I give them a chance against any team. I don't care who they are. I give them a chance against any team. And it's pretty cool that we were saying that because I never would have expected that to be the case this year.
Nope, none of us have. None of us ever thought that. Also with Vibe Check 2, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there is a Panthers fan who just has an all-time vibes to him. That one guy who went super viral, his name's Carolina Mike. If you haven't seen the video, I'll send it to you on Twitter. But no, with the Patriots though, it's just
the dancing guy.
Yeah, he has he literally has a song called. He basically talks about what he would do with $150,000, but it's nothing. The song has nothing to do with the Panthers except for wanting to buy season tickets. But no, it's one of those hilarious things. But with the Patriots, the fact they kind of control their own destiny and the fact that they're giving us fun, because if you had asked me 6 months ago, which I have said on the record, if they could be competitive at Thanksgiving, that's all I would have asked.
Mm-hmm.
That they're in the hunt graphic, like if they were 6-5 right now, say if they were where the Panthers or the Buccaneers were, I don't think any fan would be mad at that.
No,
but the fact that they're if they go to 10-2 on Sunday, which I feel like they should, or even if they're at 11-2 going into that Buffalo game, which I will say this about that game, it's not getting flexed to Sunday Night Football because the team with the star on their helmet plays, even though they're terrible. That team doesn't get flexed out of prime time.
Yep.
And also the Steelers play the Lions in that one too. And for as bad as for as wonky as the Steelers have been, I just think that's a matchup they'll keep there. So put us at 1:00, put us wherever. I know you probably like it too for tailgating. You don't get home too late, but
I love 4:30 games are the best games.
Oh, for me too.
For the tailgate, the 4:30 games are the best games.
Yeah. Me too. But you know what? It's like we're saying, just keep the vibes going, keep the good times rolling, and hopefully we have a lot more good football to talk about over the next 6, 7 to 8, hopefully 9 into 10 weeks. I don't know how many weeks are from the Super Bowl, but I also don't want to think about it.
Well, and that's, but to your point, right? If you're 11-2 heading into that Bills game, the Bills have the Texans on the road Thursday night at the Steelers, home against the Bengals. There's a chance the Patriots could lose to the Bills because the Bills also play the Eagles at home. There's a chance the Patriots could lose both to the Bills and to the Ravens and still win the AFCs. Because remember, they have the tiebreaker over the Bills because they have a better division record. And that matters. Obviously, that's the second tiebreaker. So if the head-to-head is tied, they have the better record in the division. And so if you can win, if the Patriots win all their games, except for the Bills and Ravens games, they win the division with the same record, but they win the division, right? And I mean, then you're talking about a team that goes 13-4, which is wild. But that's where the Patriots are at. And if they're able to do that, if they're able to pull that off, then again, you feel great about where they are because you're like, hey, we could beat anyone in any game. And at 13-4, maybe you get the 1 seed. And if you get the 1 seed in a bye, now you're talking about weekend. Man, chilling out wild card weekend, and then in divisional weekend, who knows who you're getting, right? You're getting either the winner of the Buffalo and Steelers game, probably, or you're getting if the Chiefs or if the 6 or the 7 seed, have get an upset win, you're playing one of those teams. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. So I'm just excited that we're back in the playoffs, and this is the situation that I never. Again, I said all offseason, I said 8 wins. They're going to win 8 games. Like, that's going to be a huge improvement on what there was. 8 games is going to be great. We're building something for the future. Don't panic. Don't freak out. And now they're 9-2, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, sure, that makes sense. Like, I love it. And Drake's playing like an MVP candidate. And Kayshon Boutte is developed incredibly. And Demario Douglas is playing well now. And Stephon Diggs looks like a true number 1 receiver again. And Mac Hollins, who, got a ton of hate as a signing here, so it's really good. And so, everything is breaking the Patriots' way. And you kind of almost feel like this could be a season they could win the Super Bowl because everything has broken their way. And so you're like, well, if everything keeps going their way, they can get there and win, right? And I think that would be That would be incredible if that were to happen. I don't know if it will. I'm not sure if it will. I don't know if I trust the fact that it will. But I think it could, and that would be really cool.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Obviously,
just have a season we can be proud of, and
Yeah.
because even at the end of the day, like I said too, whether they have a great year, they go to the Final Four, they go to the Super Bowl, or they get to the Final Eight, they gave us a season that we can look on and say, "Hey, we're not done. We're just getting started."
Correct. Yep.
The first time you and I talked was a therapy episode. We're now at a vibes check episode.
Yeah.
And hopefully the next time you and I talk, it's just more of a Jesus Christ. Sorry, CeeDee Lamb had a really bad drop.
Oh boy.
But no, with the vibe checks. Oh, Jesus, CeeDee, you're distracting me. But no, it's just been an all-times vibes check. We've made a little tour around the NFL. Went a little longer than expected, but you know what? We're going to end this because we both got to, saddle up, get back to work in the morning.
Yep.
But for the one and only Pat Lane, I'm Griff, episode 408 in the bag. 409's coming tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much for listening. And go Pats.
That's right.